Well, thanks to Nikki and everyone for having me tonight. Hopefully, I can kind of answer some of your questions. I know you were looking maybe to cover information about fruit trees, some things like that, but I'll be talking more about native shrubs and maybe things that are edible from those. We'll cover, I think we have one berry that we're covering tonight, junipers, and then also hazelnuts. So not everything I'm going to talk about maybe is totally human edible tonight. Some things I did include maybe just as more kind of a food for birds or wildlife. I did throw a few of those in there as well. So I'm not always quite sure what berries would be edible in the woods, but it's I think the ones tonight should be good. So I work for Prairie Restorations. We have a site over in Munger, not too far from the Munger Tavern called Boreal Natives. And I've worked there for the last 15 or 16 years. I'm the trained shrub production manager. I don't really have a background in plants, formal education wise, but I do have some experience. I'm not a taxonomist as far as identifying plants or anything, but over the last few years, I have gotten kind of good at growing them in pots, and that's the kind of the hardest part. So we have a nursery over there that grows native flowers and grasses. I grow the trees and shrubs, and would love to have you come out. We have retail hours on Fridays 9 to 5, Saturdays 9 to 1, and you can make an appointment. If those hours don't work for you, you can call and say, well, I'd like to come on a Wednesday afternoon, and we'd love to try and work you in. But I would call first because sometimes we're out collecting seeds or doing other projects like that. So if you're going to plant things, let's see here. I think I'm frozen. Yeah. Here. Okay. Yes. Thank you. The things that we're kind of giving away tonight aren't super big as far as planting, but if you've got something much bigger, I would recommend, if you don't know kind of what's underground, to call to find out. This is kind of a liability thing I bring this up. So it's always good to know where things are underground before you stick a shovel or spade in. Then, where are you putting the plant? Consider the mature height. Is it going to interfere with power lines, sidewalks? Maybe your neighbors, maybe you like them or not, I don't know, but some of these make nice screens. If you want to screen off your property, you could do that. I use a few of them in my yard. I get along fine with my neighbors, but it's nice to not see them in the sun as well. So sun exposure, how much light is it going to get the plant? Most of these things that we're talking about tonight will do well in full sun, partial sun. Some of them maybe part shade or full shade. But the more sun they have, the better they're going to flower, the better they're going to fruit. So if you can give that some thought as you plant them. Soil conditions, most of these plants do fine just in the regular native soil that we have. Down, you're a little bit further south than we are, towards Duluth, where there's more clay. So maybe you have more sand here, I'm not sure. But maybe your soil is a little bit Maybe you'd want to add compost. Duluth has a good supply of compost they make for the city. That is a really good adjustment to your soil if you have really loose, dry, sandy soil. And what if you want to grow some of these on your own? You know, all these plants that we're talking about, we're very lucky because you can get in your car and travel 30 minutes and find most of these growing around Duluth or up the North Shore. These plants are very common. Okay, so let's start with service berries. And the first one I'm going to start with is really not totally a native. It's a selection taken from North Dakota. It's actually unlike your almond-folia, but it was a selection they chose, I think maybe more for height than anything else. Almond-folia can get pretty large, probably 12 to 15 feet. And Regent is more of a 6-foot plant, 4 to 6 feet tall, about my size, ultimately. You can see this time of year, all the service berries are really starting to flower. Some nice white flowers. A great pollinator plant. These really like them. Probably many of the service berries, Regent probably has the better tasting ones. And that seems like sometimes they can be pretty good. Sometimes you can't get them out of your mouth fast enough. They're so acerbic, they just suck all the juice right out of your mouth. So Regent is going to, like I said, grow to about 4 to 6 feet tall. That's the only plant that I have at the nursery that we really can't plant seed of, like I said, because it's a cultivar, so we have to buy those. But they make for a very tasty berry usually. Then there are other Juneberries, long Juneberry, which they did bring tonight as part of the giveaway. Those can be kind of variable, anywhere from 3 to 4 feet up to, I see them growing 10 to 12 feet tall as well. So they can be kind of variable, kind of considering the soil that they're growing in. So then we get up into taller ones. Interior can be a small multi-stem shrub to about 30, 35 feet. And then Lavis, or the Allegheny service berry, that usually is found in the single stem, small, to about 40 to 45 feet, which can be a little problematic if you're trying to collect berries. If berries are what you're after, then I would probably try to go with either a low Juneberry or the Regent service berry. And service berries or Juneberries are very apt to hybridize with each other. When we're in the woods, a lot of times we'll see interior growing right next to Lavis, and there's a very large likelihood that those are going to hybridize with each other. And so to get a service berry that's 100% a particular species, that's really hard to say if that's what you're going to get. Because chances are, if you have several different species growing next to each other, you're going to get some kind of weird hybrid of the two. So what we try to do is identify them by size and growth characteristics. So we can kind of narrow down the shorter growing ones from the larger tree growing ones, and then we can kind of figure out what species those are going to be. There are a lot of other Juneberries in this category, 2 or 3 others that are very similar in growth. And you really have to get down to counting the leaf margins to figure out what species it is, or to take a hand lens and look at the flowers, because a lot of times there's very, very little difference between them. But yeah, if you like Juneberries, then this is like it's a matter of how big do you want them to be. the taller you go, the less likely you are maybe to be able to collect berries from them. So, Juneberries don't really take anything else as far as a particular. Yep. Oh, and there's really nothing that you need to do special to grow Juneberries. Plant them in the native soil. They might like a little bit of acidic fertilizer. There's really not much to pamper them with. You might see a little bit of rust on them, like cedar rust. That is usually not fatal to the plants. It's more unsightly than anything else, but it shouldn't kill the plants at all. Sometimes you'll see fungus growing on the fruit themselves. Then, obviously you don't want to use those. But, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We're going through. Yeah.
We have some at the school. They don't seem to be doing very well, and they seem to be covered with some kind of lichen.
On the stem?
Yes.
I don't know what that would be, but does it prohibit them from flowering or fruiting?
No, it doesn't. I don't know if it's really affected. They just don't seem to be doing really. We have just almost pure sand and gravel, so I'm not sure.
Do you have to like water them all the time? Kind of, I wonder if the lichens are, if it's like really wet and the lichens are forming from that, or I wouldn't think so. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. I haven't seen that before. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure what to do here. Let's see.
You want to change the slide?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Okay, so now we're to the black chokeberry. Aronia melanocarpa. This is a plant that offers a lot, like all year long, like, 3 seasons anyway. In the spring, you get really nice white flowers. That's a really great bee pollinator, attractive to bees. Late summer, you get the berries, and fall, you get some nice, attractive, kind of reddish foliage. In the trade, if you go to a garden center, you'll see Aronia for sale, and their selections have a little bit bigger berries on them, more like a fingernail size. The true native Aronia, the berries are a little bit smaller and not quite as juicy or fruity. My coworker, we grow both at the nursery, just because a lot of people like the bigger berries. They like to juice them or use them that way. But there's kind of a, I would say, between the native and the cultivars, the berries are probably twice as small in the native ones. It's unfortunate that you don't see this plant around more than you do, because it grows sun through shade, wet, dry. It really will grow in a lot of different areas. But honestly, I don't see it growing out in the wild all that much, like you think it should be. We first started collecting it in swamps, and we've luckily found a little drier place to collect them now. But a really nice plant. It's really good for just if you like something in your yard as a specimen plant. It comes back well. In my yard, the rabbits will mow down everything at the snow level. But this plant comes back really nice from that. It almost seems like it likes that kind of pruning back a little bit. It wants to then kind of bush out more from the bottom. But really a nice plant.
The plants that are being given out today,
Yes.
like, how long does it take for those to become more established? I mean, I'm assuming that when people plant them, they'll want to put some kind of a little fencing or
Yep.
something around.
Yeah, the plants that we brought over, the littler ones are about a year old. So they're probably anywhere from 12 to 15, 18 inches tall. So maybe a little chicken wire, let them get established let them get established for a year. After that, if they get browsed, they should come back pretty well. But some things like the plums, you probably want to keep some fencing on longer, just as some of those get a little bit taller and the deer could get after them. But definitely rabbits in my yard are more of a threat than deer are. Yeah, so a little chicken wire or welded wire fencing, whatever you have, just keep critters out for a while. A good bird plant though as well. The birds really like the berries. So aronia is separate from the plums you were asking about before, the chokeberries. Those are in the prunus family, so they're a little bit different. The black chokeberry is going to get about 4 to 6 feet tall. Doesn't get super large. Then I'll go kind of just through some dogwoods maybe real quick. These are not edible, I don't think, for humans. But if you're into birds or providing food for animals, the dogwoods are a good way to go. And the pagoda dogwood makes a great specimen tree in your yard. Gets about 30 to 35 feet tall. Does well in sun, but part sun. I see them growing in full shade in the woods, but they're lacking a little bit. They lose a little bit of their kind of pizzazz, but they get that layered look. The limbs will lay down flat. They'll throw up another trunk vertically, and then another layer of limbs to go out as well. So it keeps stacking those layered branches and has kind of a cool look to it. Lots of dark berries late summer. The birds really like those as well. Mound leaf dogwood, you'll see this along the wood's edge. A good berry plant as well. You can kind of see they'll turn from white to kind of a bluish color as they mature. Red twig dogwood, everybody's probably pretty familiar with that. These have the white berries with red canes. The dogwoods will take a good pruning every couple of years. You can cut them back if they get a little bit too leggy on you. You can cut them back and they do really well as kind of a rejuvenating cut. Or every couple of years you can go in and remove some of those canes. Just kind of thin it out a little bit. Hazelnut in Minnesota, we have a couple different species of hazelnut. There's Americana, which has the clusters. I usually have to pick them pretty green because animals will get to them, or they'll get kind of the worm inside it. But a great food for bears. They're always after the hazelnuts. And you can see kind of the clustered, they'll have 3 or 4 nuts in a cluster, as opposed to the other hazelnut, beaked hazelnut. The plants themselves, there's really not much to differentiate between the two except for the nuts. You can see These have a little bit different shape to them, and they're covered with these fine hairs that are very annoying in your skin. When we're out collecting, we always use nitrile gloves to collect these. Otherwise, those little hairs can be super annoying. You don't see, the beaked hazel to me doesn't seem like it's quite as productive as far as nuts. You know, if you're really after producing hazelnuts, then I would go with the first one, the Americana. But the nuts themselves, there's really not any difference between the two. We see the two species growing side by side in the woods. A lot of times woods edge or kind of out in the open, you'll see hazelnut thickets. Yeah. Winterberry, excuse me, kind of is a good plant for maybe an average to wetter location. You see them growing in kind of along stream banks or lake edges of lakes. This is a plant where you would need a male and a female. Usually we recommend one male for 4 females, and it takes us at the nursery a couple of years for them to get up to a certain size before we can identify what sex they are. Sometimes you'll get a plant which is a hermaphrodite, which will have the sex organs of both male and female on the same plant. But a lot of times you'll have the females here that has this kind of a shape to the flower. And then the males, you can see over here with the pollen, the anther and the pollen there. But those are very small, and you really need almost like a hand lens to tell when they start flowering. The plant can be covered pretty well with the berries. They're really tiny and a little annoying to pick off the plant because you end up kind of almost stripping the plant of leaves trying to grab the little guys. But like I said, a good spot for a winter area.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, we had something called pin cherries. What are them?
Pin cherry would be with the like chokeberry and American plum family.
Oh,
And they're kind of one of the first things to kind of go into an open area. One of the first things like birch trees or aspen trees, pin cherries would be right up there on that list as well. And then they're going to provide shade for kind of that next succession of trees to come along as well. So they're kind of a short-lived tree. We do sell them at the nursery, but it seems like to grow one in a container is not easy because it seems like it suffers a lot of fungal kind of things going on. So to grow a nice one that you can sell is sometimes can be problematic, but we try. And so those two berries are very small, you know, and there's and the stone inside is pretty good size.
sour,
Inside compared to the fruit.
really sour,
Yeah.
bitter or something.
Yeah, it's good for birds.
Yeah.
We have a question online, says, what time of year are hazelnuts ready to be picked?
I would say August.
August?
Yeah. And we may need to get to them, you know, we try to get to them when they're kind of green. If you let them ripen, they'll get, it's a little borer inside. It's there's a little worm that gets inside of them. The first time I took my son out collecting hazelnuts, I said, yeah, come on, Max, you gotta try one of these. And of course, the first one he opens up, you know, it's got a worm inside, and so he ate it. But, yeah, so get to them as early as you can. You can let them sit and ripen. And they should be fine after maybe a week or two of ripening, so. Okay. Common juniper, you see this growing down a lot on Park Point. You can see it kind of grows in kind of groups. 3 to 5 feet tall, doesn't get super large. So spread out more horizontally than vertically. The berries are kind of a 3-year project. It takes 2 to 3 years for the berries to ripen. And they'll have kind of a waxy bloom on the outside of the berries. This one, I don't know, I kind of enjoy them. They're easy to grow, and they seem like a good habitat plant.
Did you say it takes 2 to 3 years for the berry to ripen, or?
Yep. So you'll see there'll be kind of a whitish berry, almost kind of that first or second year. And then as they mature, they kind of get to that dark purple. So on one branch, you'll see kind of all different stages of berries going on. But if you're a gin drinker like I am, then you know all about junipers. So,
You answered my question.
Yeah, I'm curious, with most of them, I should have asked before, but do they take stratification if you were studying them from seeds?
talking about junipers?
Well, yeah, juniper, of course, but
Yeah, junipers would take about a 2-year, usually we hang on to the seed plat for 2 years. You might get a few to germinate the first year, but usually it's going to be the second year. And so if you're growing these on your own, that's a good question about stratification. You would want to, depending on the species, probably put them in the fridge over winter, maybe in some damp vermiculite or sand. Not saturated, you don't want it soaking wet, but just damp enough to kind of get them through the winter. You would clean, we put them in a blender with some dish soap because it's so waxy, that berry is so waxy, it takes some dish soap really to get it clean. And so we put a lot of our berries in the blender. If they're too big, you have to be careful that you'll crack them. But if you just give them a quick zip, that'll usually be enough to kind of clean them off. Some seeds are going to take a warm stratification first, so you might need to keep them warm, then cold, then warm again. So that's why some seeds are going to take 2 years, because they need that initial warm stratification before the cold. A lot of them you can put straight into the fridge and start with the cold. But Elix, the one I showed before this, they'll take a warm stratification. The winterberry, and there's a few others. Sambucus, which we'll talk about, the elderberries, they can take a warm stratification as well. But there's plenty of information out there. There are books about growing from seed and explains stratification, and there are books you can find as well that will dial right into exactly what that stratification would be for that particular species. Yeah, that's good. All right, so then we'll get into the prunus species, the plums. This picture is of sand cherry that grows down on Park Point. Just a very cool plant. It's one of the few places that it grows in the state. There's kind of a discussion whether there are actually 1 or 2 species of sand cherries. But the one we have at Park Point grows pretty much in straight sand, maybe about knee high, and kind of spreads out into little colonies. The old timers down on Park Point, I don't know, I think they're pulling my leg because they said they would make pies out of them. But they're, the stone inside is pretty big. So you don't get a whole lot of fruit from each particular, berry. But I could see if you had enough of them, they might be kind of tasty. But otherwise we have plums, pin cherries, sand cherries, and choke cherries. All part of that prunus family.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Are the juniper easier to propagate as softwood cuttings? is a question.
I don't have any experience with that. That very well could be. That could be. We don't do cuttings at our nursery just because we're more interested in diversity and biodiversity. So we collect from a wide range of trees or bushes. And so we're trying to increase the amount of diversity that we get back so that we're not collecting all from one tree and getting all the same genes from that tree. So plums, I think most people would recognize those. I'm not a plum person, but my coworker will eat them and then I'll plant the pits. But they're, I don't know, they're probably about that big around, something like that. Very pretty and all grouped together. And this time of year, you know, you're probably seeing them starting to bloom around the area. We do have a Canadian plum in this area as well, not as common, I don't think. I've never really run into one as we're out plucking seeds or berries, but someday I hope to. Pin cherry, this is what you're asking about, the little guys right there. Great plant for birds. And one of those early successional trees, you know, that provide shade for everything else to get going. Kind of a short-lived tree. Seem to have a lot of problems with fungus and things like that, like I said. We talked a little bit about sand cherry already. There's kind of the white flowers. This is kind of what you would see down on Park Point. They form kind of a nice, plant about that high or so.
What do you think? It's only Park Point because it's sandy, you say?
Yeah, there are some that grow down on the Anoka sand plate as well, down in the center part of the state. But I think in this area, if you've got dry, gravelly soil, this would be a good candidate. I think it would do really well.
The wild plum, do you find it a little invasive?
It can be.
Or if you put it in your small yard or something like that?
Yeah, and it tends to sucker as well. You know, if you want a small single stem tree, you kind of have to keep kind of that on the suckers. And some people don't mind having a multi-stem. Some are more into appearances, I guess, but
we have some pin cherries. I work for the college. We have some pin cherries on campus that I haven't seen fruit before. And I'm wondering, they definitely are suckers from a larger, you know, like a stem that was buried, or I don't know if they were volunteers or purposely planted, but do you know anything about why they might not be fruiting?
I don't know. I wondered if you would prune some of them out, maybe, and reduce the amount, if that would help or not. I don't know. Maybe it's putting more energy into growing vegetation. And, yeah. That might be a good place to start. Chokeberry. This is very common around the area. You can see the kind of droops of berries that it forms. Right now, you'll see these all over in the woods, woods edge or ditches. It can get fungus knot virus. We call them dog turd viruses in the nursery, but that's kind of what they look like. And not fatal, just cut them out. It shouldn't kill the plant or anything. Be careful that you don't confuse it with, I'm drawing a blank now, the invasive buckthorn. It looks very similar to buckthorn. One difference you can tell with the berries is that buckthorn is more random. It will have 2 or 3 fruits kind of just randomly here and there, as opposed to the chokeberries that are more kind of in a group, like that. Buckthorn will stay greener longer into the late summer, fall. So when everything else is losing leaves, buckthorn is still looking green. So that's another way to tell. Chokeberry, very used very commonly, I think, in food. I know we had people make wine out of it or jam, lots of other things as well. Staghorn sumac, this is kind of one of my favorite plants here, very underused. Some people might find it too aggressive for them, depending on your yard, but there's a couple different sumacs in Minnesota. The difference with staghorn has those fine hairs growing on the stems and on the berries as well, the flowers and the berries, which persist into the winter, which is kind of nice for wildlife. But yeah, another plant that would do well in your dry gravelly soil here.
I thought that was poison.
Sumac, there is a poison in sumac, yeah, but that's not part of this family. That's a different family altogether. We make tea of it with the berries at work because before we sow the seed, they have to boil them in water. So we just make tea out of what we have boiled, and it's pretty tasty.
I was gonna say, if I was gonna harvest some to make tea, when would be a good time to harvest those?
Fall, late summer, fall, yeah. And they'll persist for a long time on the plant. You know, you can tell that after all the leaves are gone, the berries are still there, so they'd still be good for that. The other one is more common around Minnesota, smooth sumac. And virtually the same plant. It'll grow a little bit bigger, but these stems will all be pretty smooth. A couple of roses, real quick. Prairie rose. I'm not sure if it comes up quite this far into, are you Carlton County here? Yeah. I'm not sure if it comes into Carlton County. It might. It does. Okay. Yeah. So rose hips persist. Good with vitamin C. Not quite as tall growing as the meadow rose or the smooth rose. And that's pretty common around these areas. A simple pink 5-petaled flower with the rose hips. And you can see that usually the new growth is smooth. That will change over time, but usually that new growth for that year will be somewhat smooth. The lower parts can be a little thornier, but we collect them down at collect rose hips down by the St. Louis River. And the plant is growing this far from the river. So they will take a lot of water, saturated soil. They'll grow in averages as well. But you can certainly use them in a wetter area too. Really not too many problems concerning the two, as you know, with, as opposed to growing hybrid tea roses or something like that. The native roses are a lot less finicky. Will spread a little bit, so you might want to give them a little bit of room. One of my favorite things to eat, thimbleberries in the woods. My son made a pie last year with them, and it was just fantastic. Really a nice plant for the garden, I think, because it's got a little bit different leaf shape to it. So it provides a little bit of contrast in the garden with these kind of bigger, heavy green leaves. You can see the fruits kind of ripening here. Some years are great for thimbleberries. Some years you hardly see any fruit at all. I'm not sure if it's a matter of moisture or exactly what's going on there, but kind of a nice light flower to them.
Question,
Yes.
are these going to grow in an area where there's lots of pine trees, or do they like acidic soil?
They would like acidic soil, yeah. These will grow in pretty heavy shade. You won't probably get as many fruit from them, but they will at least grow in shade. A southwest corner would probably be pretty good. They do like a little bit of light. Yeah, a very tasty fruit. Very, if you like raspberries, thimbleberries might be right up your alley. Common elderberry, these are the ones that fruit in the fall, late summer, fall. They have kind of a dark maroon fruit, not to be confused with the red-berried elder that's going to be fruiting very soon in a matter of a couple of weeks. Those are not edible. Good bird plant, but if you want to eat elderberries, it's the canadensis that you want to try. Nice white flowers. You see them growing in road ditches or kind of open areas like that.
Would you say they're not edible?
The red berry elder? This one?
Yeah.
This one is totally edible.
Oh.
Canadensis, yeah. It's the red berried elder that is not, and that's the one that's going to be fruiting during a couple of weeks. At least I'm pretty sure they're not edible.
They're not.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So what can you do to stop the birds from harvesting them before you?
Yes, maybe, I don't know, maybe some light netting, once the fruit is formed, or, something that's not too heavy, but, we have been selling this plant quite a bit more the last probably 5 years. I think as things warm up, and climate-wise, that this plant's going to do a lot better up here in the north. I wouldn't say it's super common right now, but the customers that have come back who've grown it said they get tons of fruit on it. So,
When did you say this one's harvestable?
this would be late summer, like late August, probably into September. Yeah.
I was just gonna mention that, I don't know if this is effective or not, but I have heard from other folks that putting like Mylar strips, like shiny, like, like those balloons you buy from the fruit drugstore or something, those Mylar thin strips on fruiting trees like this will scare birds away, like when they flicker in the wind. I heard that from people who grow grapes, so that might work for that.
If you buy elderberry in a garden center and it's a named cultivar, you're going to need more than one cultivar to pollinate that plant. The native ones you don't, but there are cultivars like, I think York is one of them. There's 2 or 3 others. And if you try one of those, then you will need another pollinator. And just make sure that if you do that, that your plants are flowering at the same time, so they're able to pollinate at the correct time.
I've tried netting stuff before and it was awful. Trying to get it back off, or not able to get it off, and finding carcasses of birds and squirrels and chipmunks dangling inside of the tree that tried to get in there.
Yeah, the netting.
Terrible stuff to try and get it off.
I can see where things would grow up through there, and then it would be, once you take it off, you're tearing things.
Yeah.
What kind of netting?
It was like a bird netting. I don't know what it's called, but it was the stuff that my landlord had left in the basement, and I tried to give it a shot because they were eating all the plums and all the grapes, and it was terrible. Found bodies everywhere.
I use deer netting. So I use step-on fence poles around my Juneberry tree. In all fairness, I let the birds and the wasps have the honeyberries and the rabbits eat the blueberries. So the Juneberries are mine. And so I use step-on poles and some plastic netting that goes around the Juneberry, and then some stakes that went up higher. Now, they got too tall for that. I have this squash contraption wooden thing that I now have, but the deer netting didn't like get any birds. I think they were okay with it. Like they were like, okay, we'll just leave your Juneberry. But we've never, even we did put deer netting over our honeyberries as well, and we've never lost a bird in that deer netting.
Is that openings are larger?
I beg your pardon?
Yeah.
The openings are larger in the deer netting?
Yeah, I mean, they're about that big around deer netting, but I did buy insect netting this year for the honeyberries. It's like a bag and it then ties at the bottom. But the honeyberries are bigger than the bag, so I gotta figure out something else. Because of wasps, we don't get a honeyberry because of wasps. You take a bite of each one. I don't know how much more you got to go. We're at 6:25. So, I mean, unless you're in a big rush and you need to, like, you've got something going on after this.
I think we have about 3 plants left, 3 or 4. We'll just go through the viburnums real quickly. This one I don't think is edible, the nannyberry, cool planto. Nice white flowers. This plant will grow to about 12 to 15 feet tall. Again, we'll take some moisture. We have to pick the berries green, otherwise snakes will get them. And then as they ripen, it looks like a little coffee bean, almost. It gets to that black, almost. This is Downy Arrowwood, but the beans would look like that. This is a little bit shorter viburnum. Again, a good pollinator. You've got longhorn beetles and bees there. Wood's edge would be fine, or more of an open area. But for native shrubs, it's nice because it's lower growing. It's about 6 to 8 feet tall. And a lot of the other viburnums are pretty good size. High bush cranberry, you see this with these fruits persisting into the winter. You can see kind of the red berries. So you get nice white flowers, and then again, colorful foliage in the fall. Also about 12 to 15 feet next to alongside the nannyberry. They're about the same height. We see them growing side by side quite a bit. A good bird plant.
Question?
Yeah, this one, the high bush cranberry, I heard that you can't really distinguish from the European to the native.
Very difficult.
It's very difficult, right?
Yeah. You have to, there are glands, like little glands that stick up right here on the edge of the stems. And you need a hand lens to really kind of tell the different characteristics. There was somebody who contacted our nursery last year wanting to do a DNA study with high bush cranberry because, as he said, there's the European cranberry that is almost indistinguishable from the viburnum trilobum. And actually, if you look up Minnesota native, their wildflowers, their website, they don't even list trilobum. They call it viburnum americanum now. So there's some changes going on. So we did a survey. They gave us like 200 pictures of these glands, and they gave us like 3 or 4 choices. So I haven't seen the results back yet. But I think with DNA testing, maybe they'll be able to figure some of that out. But the European one has escaped into the wild. And so, I don't know, it's kind of a crapshoot what you collect.
From what I understand, the only difference is actually the American one tastes good. I mean, very tart and acidic on day, but the European one is very bitter.
Really, I find it to be very hard as well. The European one, it seems like it's very hard and doesn't want to ripen into this like nice soft. Yeah. But hopefully, I don't know, as we go out seed collecting around Duluth and St. Louis County, we haven't really run into a lot of the European ones yet. At least that's what we think. But we're having the plants that we grow at the nursery, we're having those tested as well. So I'm kind of anxious to see the results, And then blueberries. So in Minnesota, we have 2 native blueberries. We have angustifolium, and there's another one called myrtleoides. And really the only difference is the myrtleoides has maybe more hair on the leaves and the stems, but basically there's no difference otherwise. Native blueberries are a little bit smaller. than the cultivars that you purchase. But a lot of people, I think, would say they're tastier. And everybody has their own favorite blueberry spots, sworn secrecy, but we get most of ours down on Park Point, out amongst the poison ivy, where other people won't know. So we feel pretty good about where we collect it from, so.
Why do blueberries always come back and grow so much better after a fire?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if it's more open, maybe there's more, maybe some of the other vegetation is burned away as well. So maybe it's more open to the exposure, sun exposure. That might be one thing. When we plant these, we suggest people use half sand and half peat when you're putting them in the ground. They like the acidity of the peat, and the sand they like also the well draining. So if you're thinking here that you have a lot of gravelly, dry soil, you may want to increase the amount of peat that you use and lower the amount of sand. But when we put them in the pots, we usually leave out any dirt. Just a couple quick pictures. This is kind of our nursery, kind of how we have things set up. In the wintertime, we cover everything. We lay everything down, cover them with straw and plastic. It's kind of a long job that nobody likes, but we had really good luck coming out of the winter this year. With all the snow, things look pretty good.
What's under the?
These are all the plants.
Baby trees?
We all lay everything down. We stack pots about this high on their side, and then cover with clear plastic and then straw, and then this black plastic. The white kind of reflects the sun, and then it's black below, which keeps everything dark. So we're trying to keep everything from freezing and thawing over and over and over. We let things freeze and then cover them so they stay frozen, hopefully until March or April.
How big did last winter when all the snow?
The snow covered all those pots. Yeah.
Snow is actually a really good insulator.
Yeah.
I think the main problem is that since the roots are above the ground, that air temperature is often way colder than the ground temperature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have problems with pests like rabbits and stuff getting in there?
Not rabbits, but mice and voles.
Okay.
We have a deer fence all the way around, and then you can't see it, but about 4 feet up on here, we have chicken wire to keep rabbits out. But in the wintertime, I hate to say this, but we throw down a lot of bait, just because we have to get rid of or dissuade the mice and the voles from eating things. We had real trouble with that at our production site in Princeton. They didn't do that this year, and basically everything had to be thrown away. So I was not happy about that. But the coolest part of the job is being out in areas like this and collecting and just being out in nature. You're out in the swamps, the forest, just all kinds of different areas. So that's really the best part of the job. And I'll be retiring at the end of this year, but we have another young man who's taking over next year, and he knows much more than I ever did. So I think we'll be in good shape. So, all right, I think I've jibber-jabbered long enough. Is there any questions? Hopefully I've covered everything, but.
I've started looking for a